Mes amis, the time has come for war. Our Emperor Napoleon is calling upon your services in the war game March of the Eagles.
So we're not too far removed from the release of March of the Eagles, a game with sort of, I guess you called it Bride of Frankenstein past a little bit. And of course it started its life as Napoleon's Campaigns 2. Now Paradox Development Studios taking it over. What was the focus when you took over the game? What did you want to make of this concept?
Well, I mean, we were looking at kind of three things we were looking to develop. We wanted a strongly war-focused game because we felt we liked them and we also think they're a lot of fun. We also wanted to make it dynamic. You know, you were here earlier for the press conference where we talked a lot about replayability is one of the big things we like to add in a game. So we were looking to see how much fun we can put into these kind of games. And the final thing was to, you know, expand out and make every country playable, which is going to allow you a whole series of challenges, you know, starting off with France, who's the most powerful country in the world at this point in time, all the way through to tiny little Brunswick, and can you even survive, to give the player that spectrum of challenges.
Is there much to do as a small country in this era?
Not really, to be honest. You know, I mean, it is the challenging countries. You know, your goal is to survive, try and find a good alliance, and then from there see what you can pick up as you go along. But definitely they are the really difficult ones to play.
So it's a little bit like one of those polishing fish needs to find the big fish to sort of feed off, and symbiosis thing going.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It's also the game itself has very much, it's got victory conditions. It's very unusual for a Paradox title from that point of view. But we've only given victory conditions to the 8 great powers. For the rest of the countries, your job is to try and get on the winning side and stay there. And if they're not winning anymore, switch sides.
So how did you, because I guess that's one of the key things to design then, is to design the objectives for each of the powers to make sure that they're both maybe not balanced because they don't need to be, but to give players a lot of different sort of routes to take.
Yeah, I mean, the objective system is to become dominant on land, you need 7 of 10 objectives. So we've automatically said there's 3 additional ones there for you to try different variants. And we do a combination of historical targets. So like Napoleon has targets in Russia, so a victory in Russia will advance him along. And we've also given Austria and Prussia targets in Russia as well because they joined in Napoleon's invasion. So therefore they have an game-wise incentive. So we've used them to incentivize historical choices, but we've also tried to make them fun and challenging as well for countries. So therefore you have ones which are fairly easy to grab, and then you have the next tier which are going to have to think a bit more and work a bit more. I mean when we ran through the demonstration earlier, I was playing Austria. One of my targets is Munich, which is in Bavaria, who's not got any friends. And if you go in there quick enough, you can grab it before they get any friends. And then the next targets are then in the countries that do have friends, and it becomes more challenging. So you have these nice, easy, soft targets to pick up, and then you just need to think and get challenged a bit more as you go along.
I think there was a mechanic in there. The idea system is a little bit like a rubber band effect that sort of pulls the losing side of a war sort of closer to the side that actually wins it because they get more idea points. Is that sort of the idea there?
Well, absolutely. Well, it's partly to create rubber banding and help these kind of things, but it was actually also very historical as well. You know, the way we've set up the game, the French army is the best in the world, so they have these whole number of land ideas that give them a huge boost early on. And what happened historically was France went around and beat up Austria, beat up Prussia, and won these victories. And then these countries went away, rethought, learnt lessons, and then came back stronger each time. So it's a historical mechanic for a historical game, but it also adds in this rubber banding and this kind of thing that, yeah, I've been beaten in this war. It was bad for me. But I now have all these extra idea points from these military defeats, so I can now have a better army or maybe improve my finances or whatever, so that the next time I can bounce back stronger.
So that really puts, like, if you're France, you're starting with all these advantages, but maybe you want to think about attacking because maybe they'll learn a little bit too much from that.
Well, yeah, there is that kind of thing, but to win the game, you're going to have to attack somebody and help somebody get better. So it's all about that kind of challenge thing that, if I keep beating the same country over and over again, all I'm going to do is give them this, superb boost to their armed forces, and then they might just come back and take revenge. So you have to kind of spread out your victories and pick different targets.
And that is also perhaps what happened historically, that's sort of the way it played out.
Yeah, it was definitely very much a kind of historically it starts off with the third coalition in March of the Eagles is about to form, although we don't actually start it that way because we want to give you some diplomatic freedom before the game begins. But historically, first up it was Austria, who got badly beaten in 1805. Then it was Prussia's turn in 1806. Austria returns back to the field in 1809. This time their armies have improved and they've learnt a lot, and they would actually inflict the first defeat of Napoleon, although they'd still lose the war. So, but gradually, they would evolve, and then after that, it was down to Spain for Napoleon. So he was quite the traveller.
I'm sure everyone enjoyed his visits.
Oh, I'm sure they invited him back again. It's nothing like, host Napoleon, come along. Yeah.
So, obviously the game is due out soon. What's the feeling around the office when you're playing it?
Well, yeah, the game's coming out on the 18th of February, so it's very soon indeed. And we feel quite confident. It's a lot of fun game, but definitely our final task before we ship it is we're going to do a big week next week, stress testing multiplayer to make sure that works as well. Because once you've had fun in single player, multiplayer is your next step, and so we want that to work well as well.
I suppose this game would lend itself pretty well to sort of like 8 players in a more focused sort of environment to play. It's not as sprawling as say a game of Crusader Kings or...
Well, yeah, I mean, basically the game itself, because you're all chasing the identical objective, which is, land and naval dominance, you therefore are very much up against each other. In a multiplayer game of Crusader Kings, I could be in Ireland and you could be down in Hungary, and, we can just send each other messages, but it's not really going to be much of a multiplayer experience. Whereas in this game, it's very much in your face. Because there's victory conditions. If I ignore you and you go off and win, then I've lost, and then I shouldn't have done that. I should have pursued you.
But still, you have your own objectives. So it's interesting in that way how you sort of team up with your enemy to get your own objectives.
Well, yeah, we very much did it that way, that each country has its own unique objectives, allowing alliances of convenience, where we both share objectives in the same target, so we'll both jump them, and then hopefully I'll double cross you first and afterwards.
Sounds great. You talked about one thing about this might sort of bridge, be an introduction to new players to try your grand strategy games. Of course, hardcore players, they always a little bit allergic to sort of words like accessibility and stuff like that. There is still a lot of depth, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of depth. I mean, there's the reason why we say accessibility is it's a focused game. It's focused solely on the war aspect. If you take a game like Europa Universalis, you have trade, you have religion, you have colonization, and all these kind of additional features on top of the war. So it means as a new player coming in, you have how many different things you need to master. With March of the Eagles, it's just a focused war game. So therefore you do have this, you have a depth in the war, but you don't have the side things. But it does share commonality with other Paradox games. So once you've mastered moving armies in March of the Eagles, it's the same, very similar system in Europa Universalis 4 or Crusader Kings. So it's helped people bridge in. But I mean, the where we've actually done a lot of work for new players is in our hint system, where we've given each interface element a little tip which you can click on and get information on if you want. There's obviously a button just to remove them all. So once you're happy with the game, you can just remove them. But we also feel that, even if you are a hardcore strategy game, or, there's some times where you're just not ready for a quick Europa Universalis 4 campaign, and maybe you just want something that's going to be a little shorter and, a bit more fun, just I'm going to go conquer Europe as France. That's what I'll do today.
And we have to do something in the meantime before Europa Universalis 4, right?
Well, obviously there is that. We need to help fill your time, because we know you struggle with things to do. So we have March of the Eagles here for you. Help maybe fill in a few months.
Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.